Jim Acosta.
Hi, Molly. How you doing?
Um, I'm just great. You know what I'm excited about? You just
Oh,
flew today. You and I, we fly a lot. We
oh God,
travel.
too
We
much.
go we go to a lot of different places, though mostly just to California and
Yeah,
DC. Do you ever go anywhere that's not California or DC?
it seems like I've been doing a lot of California lately, which I love because the weather's nice
Yeah.
and it's not MAGA. So
So, speaking of which, we have a TSA. So the government is there's sort of a partial government shutdown, which means that the
yeah,
TSA is not TSAing right now, and people are working without pay, which means that sometimes they're not showing up, which means that the lines are like 10,000 people long, which means that Donald Trump, who has this hyper funded secret police, decided that he would send them to airports.
yeah. What could go wrong? Yeah, why don't
What
we just
could
have
go
ICE
wrong?
at the airports where people are tense and
Yes.
right.
Now, a few things about ICE. They have almost no, here are the things that I would say are the biggest problems here.
Yeah,
ICE has almost no training.
evidently, yes, we've noticed that.
Yes.
That's true,
They've,
but I saw something Tom Homan said today, well, maybe they'll just look at your boarding pass to make sure you're in the right line. Our tax dollars at work. I mean, there's a couple of things going on here. First of all, it's absurd that ICE is funded, but the rest of the Department of Homeland Security is not funded.
and
Is
ICE
this
is
any way to run
funded
a railroad?
to billions, to like 10 billion. They have like $10 billion in the BBB, right? Okay, go
Yeah,
on. I mean, they have
and I
more
guess
than that, but like 10 billion now, for
I think
warehouses and
they're getting tens of billions of dollars, right, for all of this
yeah.
mass
But there's
deportation thing.
like loose couch change for they have it all. Some of
Yeah.
it's for Christy Gnome videos.
Yeah, and something tells me that these are not the people that we wanna put at the airports, where there are a lot of tense people who are, frantically trying to make it to flights and that sort of a thing.
Will
We've
they
seen
wear
ICE kind of
masks?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Will the ICE people be in masks? I
Will
remember
they
when
have
they were telling us to
guns?
take off our masks at the airport, but anyway,
Right. Will they
I
have guns?
digress.
They really like guns.
They like all those things, but I mean, it's insane, and, the other thing that is ridiculous about all this is that just the other day, apparently the Democrats gave the Republicans an opportunity to go ahead and fund the TSA.
I think,
John Thune and the Republicans said, "Ah, no, that's okay, we're fine." So
remember,
yeah,
the Senate, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the
no.
Senate is in the middle of a talking filibuster. So
Yes.
they can vote on reopening the TSA again and again and again.
Correct. And, this could be reopened at any moment. And for some reason, they think it's a good idea for parts of the Department of Homeland Security to be shut down while we are at war with Iran in the Middle East. None of this makes any sense, but they didn't have a plan going into this, and they sure as hell don't have a plan now. And I just, this just goes to show you like what a rogue agency ICE is, that they could
Yeah.
just, oh, well, we can just send it to the airport. Hey, maybe during election time, we'll just send them to polling places. What could go wrong? What is this? This is Donald Trump's secret police force. And it seems like Tom Homan is just thinking, well, we could just change their mission, month to month, depending on what fix Donald Trump has gotten us all into.
And I think it's interesting this weekend, Donald Trump did a lot of tweeting about the Straits of Hormuz, which he recently learned about. It's closed, in case you're wondering,
Yeah. He talks about the
because,
straits a lot, which has a lot of people confused. But anyway,
right,
yeah.
yes. But the point is, he did this tweet where he was like, you have to open it right now. You have 24 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if
But
not, we're gonna bomb the hell out of it, which wouldn't that close it too? Wouldn't that cause sort of the same problem that we're in the middle of right now? Yeah, I mean, he's clearly making it up as he goes along, which we all knew he was going to do. And I saw a crazy poll number today. There was a CBS poll that came out today that said 92% of the American people want this to be over as quickly as possible. Things are not going over well. 92% of the American people don't agree on anything, but they
how
want
do
this to end.
how do 8% of Americans support this? No one has told them why.
Yeah,
Right? They
yeah.
haven't, like, go
They
for one,
accidentally
go for
called Lindsey
two.
Graham too many times, I think is what happened there. Yeah.
Right. Go for one, go for two. They were making a case. It was bullshit, but they were trying. Here he's just like, I declare, and then my favorite, I declare the straits open. But he
Yeah.
said, well, they might get a nuclear weapon. Well, they were maybe getting one. Well, they were bad guys. Like,
Yeah, at least in the run up to the, the Iraq War in the 2000s, there was a plausible reason for why the American people might believe the bullshit and lies coming out of the Bush
Right.
administration at that time. We had just come out of 9/11, and people were freaked out about terrorism and so on. There's no reason to do this right now other than, Donald Trump was in a huge political jam. You and I have talked about this with the Epstein files,
Yeah.
and I also think he and Lindsey Graham and a lot of these guys thought it was a good idea for him to go into this midterm cycle as a wartime
WordPress.
president,
Yeah.
and now he's a wartime fuck up, which is not so good going into election cycle.
I also think Donald Trump really was so empowered from what had happened in Venezuela and
Yes,
all of this adventuring that had worked for him that he thought, oh, I can just do it. And the problem with Iran is that it's a humongous country. It's you know,
90,000,000 people. There's 9,000,000 in Tehran.
yeah,
It's
it's like New York.
It's like New York. It's but, a little different in many ways. And the
Yes, a little different in many ways, but size wise, it's like
but
New York.
size-wise, yes. And now we've given the Iranians the playbook to give to every other adversary and any other group or country or state that wants to do us harm, the playbook for hurting us for the next 10 to 20 years. And they're in such a bad jam right now that they are allowing the Iranians to sell more oil. So I mean, I'm old enough to remember, Molly, during the campaign when, Trump would go after Biden and Obama and Kamala Harris for the pallets. Remember the pallets of
Yeah,
cash that
for the
the
Iran nuclear
the
deal.
Iranians and everything. And now they're just gonna give basically, one of those Trump gold cards to to the Ayatollah. Run this up as much as you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, it is look, he's panicking about oil prices. He's
Yeah,
clearly panicking, and everywhere you go, if it's not long TSA lines, it's $6 gas. So,
yeah,
clearly, people don't like this, and because Donald Trump has worked so hard to mess up clean, right, renewables, fighting, trying to kill all the tax credits for solar, for wind. He tried to bribe them not to build a solar farm in New York, right? By paying the companies because he
yeah,
was so against clean energy because is in the pocket of big oil and also big coal. But coal, I think he can't even make, even
yeah.
he can't make coal work. But the point is, what's interesting about this moment is the more expensive gas gets, the more solar makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. One is, electric cars are starting to look really good again, and we'll know how much trouble Donald Trump is in when he starts to speak favorably of windmills. When he pulls back the windmills are causing cancer and kill the birds and the whales. When he starts to praise the work of the windmills, that is when you know he's really screwed.
That's
And
right.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, he has been he's almost like a NASCAR, car driver for the fossil fuel industry. He's got like almost every logo, ExxonMobil and everything all over him. And, look at the jam that it's gotten us into. We now are now seeing the wisdom of renewable fuels. And so
Yeah.
maybe that ain't such a bad thing. But in the
No, I mean,
meantime, everybody's paying a lot for gas. I mean, did you see this? One of my favorite video clips of the week was Jonathan Allen with NBC going to the gas station in Pennsylvania, and he asked this lady who voted for Trump 3 times, "What do you think of Donald Trump right now?" She says, "You are a worthless pile of shit."
yeah.
And
I
she
you
goes, "And I voted for him 3 times."
Yeah, it's funny because
Yeah,
John and I were talking about that clip and they voted for Trump. They have he didn't do what they wanted him to do. But I think it's important that we don't lionize these people. And I'm thinking about
right.
I want to talk about Joe Kent because I think we
Mm,
should do a minute about Joe Kent.
we should do
Joe
a minute.
Kent Last week, Joe Kent resigned because he was against the war. Very unusual to see anyone ideologically break with MAGA,
Yeah.
except this strand that's anti war. Now, anti war, very good. We like anti war, especially war this stupid. The reason they're doing it, less good.
Yes. No, these are the
Discuss.
canaries in the clean coal mine, I think, right
Yes.
now. No, I think, Joe Kent, I mean, the letter of resignation, sort of blaming all of this on the Israelis, that was rather obvious what was going on there.
Yeah.
But to me, the thing that was the most remarkable part of that was he said there was no imminent threat. posed by the
Right.
Iranians. I
Right.
mean, right there in any other administration, Republican or Democrat, would probably get the president of the United States impeached.
Yeah, because he's
And
been lying.
Donald Trump absolutely took this country to war based on lies when there
Yeah.
was no imminent threat, and now he has made Americans less safe and also, by the way, less wealthy,
Yes.
less well off, and so he's screwing people every possible way in this excursion, as he calls it, and he's absolutely the worst part about it all is he's the worst president that
Yeah.
we could possibly have in this moment when there are soldiers coming back in flag draped coffins at Dover, and he can't even take his damn baseball cap off. And so I mean, Lindsey Graham was on Fox this morning saying this could last another few weeks. We did Iwo Jima, we could do this. I mean, Iwo Jima, there were thousands
Yeah.
of dead in Iwo Jima, and so the Lindsey Grahams of the world are kind of running the show, and this could get America locked in a quagmire for God knows how long, and who knows how high these gas prices are gonna go.
My favorite was Scott Bassett today on the
Yeah,
morning shows, and she was like, "Well, you have, you know, I'm sorry, Iran can sell oil
yeah,
now because they are not sanctioned anymore." And Bassett is like so arrogant, and he goes, "Yeah, now they make less money on their oil, and they were going to sell it anyway, and we're making it cheaper." And I was like, "Wait, what?"
yeah.
Like, I mean, and you've heard them just
The
every which
Treasury
way with it.
Secretary should make sense when he's
A
talking
little
about
bit
money.
at least. And then my favorite was when Trump was like, "We produce oil and gas, so we're making a ton of money on this." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Who's we?"
Yeah, Besson
Kimosabe.
is saying that we need to escalate to de-escalate. This is another one of these Orwellian things that they're saying these days. And escalation does not necessarily equal de-escalation. And there's a lot of stuff that can happen with escalation.
Peace
Are
does
these the
not
folks who
equal
are thinking these
war.
things through? They're not.
Yeah.
And why is Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, out there talking about all of this? It means
Be-
that JD Vance and Marco Rubio and they're all hiding under the couch, and they can't put Pete Hegseth out there because every time he walks out, even though he's got the Pentagon briefings staffed with ringers, he's a national embarrassment. He
yeah.
embarrasses this country every time he goes out there. And so, I mean, it's fun to needle these guys and talk about how ridiculous they are. But I mean, Molly, you and I have been around long enough to remember like what happened in the 2000s and how awful that was and how difficult it was for this country to get out of that. And
No, it's
we
going to be
could get
bad.
stuck in something far worse if this continues.
No, it's gonna be really bad.
Yeah.
There's no world in which this is not just a complete shit show, but
Yeah.
it is kind of funny that the only person they can get out there to defend it is Scott Bessent because
Yeah.
JD Vance is oddly silent now that he realizes that he's gonna have to
Mhm.
run on this bullshit.
Yes.
Marco too, a little hanging back. And
Yeah.
so if nothing else, they have gotten themselves into an untenable position. But the other reason why Besson is on the Sunday shows, which I want you to talk about, is because they are watching the markets, the futures, and they're
Yes.
freaking out. So talk about that.
No, the markets are freaking out, and I mean, Scott Bessent, not necessarily the person you want to send out there to cool things down, but he's
Yeah.
gonna say the things because Trump is a day trader and he looks at the stock market and
Mhm.
he adjusts his policies and his statements accordingly. But I mean, we could wake up tomorrow morning. The Iranians, to some extent, Molly, I don't want to say they're in the driver's seat, but they might be in the passenger seat. They're close. They're not in the
Yeah.
back seat, and they're firing off missiles in ways that are surprising military experts. They fired one off to this joint base between the U.S. and the U.K. out in the middle of the Indian Ocean that is thousands of miles away and demonstrated a capability that I think a lot of people were not aware of that the Iranians possessed, even after, and
Yeah.
especially after all of these bombing runs that the U.S. and the Israelis have been doing. And so, to some extent, the Iranians are driving events right now, in the way that the Ukrainians have been driving events in Ukraine with the Russians. They have learned that this
Yeah.
asymmetrical, drone-driven kind of, sneak up on you in the middle of the night and, hit these targets that you weren't thinking about, this type of warfare, it can stall. And if you
Mhm.
stall things out, you can drive up, the anxiety and the, anger, domestically for back home for Donald Trump and as the Ukrainians have done for Vladimir Putin back in Russia.
Right, and you don't have to win, you just have to keep going, and I
You
think
just have to keep going and drag it
yeah.
out. And the Iranians, I mean, you would think that we would have figured this out, that they would have gamed this out and said, if this drags on and on, this is gonna be like our Ukraine.
Would
Are you
you have
fucking
thought
kidding?
that? Because
Uh,
I know this is a guy who was like, "I didn't see them closing this strait. I didn't who could have predicted they would have gone after the Emiratis?"
yeah,
What are you
literally,
talking about? The
uh,
Emiratis are literally paying them to not bomb them.
yeah, I mean, the guessing game as to what would take place in a war with Iran has been going on since 1979, and it certainly picked up in the 2000s when Bush went into Iraq and, they were feeling
But
very
but
confident
this
about
is what
themselves.
we thought they would do. They're doing
This is
exactly what they
exactly
said they would do.
this is exactly what everybody thought they would do. This is the reason why Democratic and Republican administrations going back decades have tried to ask the Israelis very nicely to please cool your jets on this front because the Iranians control so much of the global energy supply, because they have the ability, if they knock down the Strait of Hormuz, to really choke off the global energy supply and just make everybody miserable everywhere. And that's
Yeah.
why the Obama administration chose the path of diplomacy and
The
the Iran
deal.
nuclear deal, the P5
Yes.
plus one, I covered that thing, and this was all argued back and forth for years and years and years. And this is exactly the scenario that a lot of the critics, I mean, Molly, you might remember this. Remember when John McCain was caught on a mic somewhere saying bomb, 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 bomb Iran? I
Yeah.
mean, that was like this was like a McCain Graham thing for many, many years. Let's go after the Iranians. And people have said, if you do this, these are the things that are going to happen. And now those things are happening.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
amazing. It's exactly what anyone who was paying attention would have thought.
Yeah.
Jim Acosta, will you come back?
Always, anytime.
Oh, you're the
Whenever you call,
best.
I will be there.
Oh, the best.